Hello, everyone. 19 Cats and Counting. I'm back again. I am certified cat behaviorist Rita Reimers, ritareimers.com, in case you've forgotten. I have the honor of having wonderful writer Scott Simon on my show, and we'll be right back after a message from our sponsor to talk about his upcoming book. And we're back with 19 Cats and Counting. I want to go right to my esteemed guest, Mr. Simon. Welcome to the show. I'm quite honored to have you here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I'm reading your book. For those of you on video, will see Ulysses S. Cat, and I just was showing this wonderful photo I took of one of my cats, who, of course, now it's not showing up for me. There we go. That is my little girl Lulu deciding she's in love with the book. I'm in
Good.
love with the book too. So, what inspired you to start writing Ulysses S. Cat?
Well, it was actually a suggestion, which I welcomed because I do a weekly essay on our show on NPR. And I had done an essay about how our family life feels at once a little overwhelmed and much enlivened by three animals in our life. There's Daisy, our French poodle.
Yes, I'm just getting into that chapter right now.
Daisy, our French poodle. Gato Blanco, a foster cat we took in from a family whose home was flooded.
Oh,
He's also called Cat. That was their name for him. We put Gato Blanco in. It's interchangeable. And then Bagel, a hamster. And we sometimes pronounce that because my wife is French, Bagel,
ah,
uh,
I love that.
because our daughter works at a delicatessen in addition to working at a horse barn. And so Bagel seemed good. And I talked about how there were some days where the first thought we have in is, okay, what does Gato want to? Where do we have to take Daisy out? Let's take a look at a Bagel.
Sounds like my
But
day. My day revolves around my animals too.
yes, but also that's a way of bringing us out of ourselves and making us, I think, more aware of the connections that we have in life. So I did that essay, got contacted, and the book resulted, and I welcomed the chance to do it because this has been, I don't want to say a theme in my, yeah, all right, it's been a theme in my work, certainly a theme in my life over the years.
Right.
And I welcomed the chance to be able to reconsider and meditate and live through some of the highlights and some of the heartbreak that we've had with the animals in our lives.
And talking about some of the ones you missed too, I mean, I could go back to my childhood as well and do that. I don't often do it, but it's a good thing to do and to remember those animals because they were part of your life too. And it sounds like the animals have always been part of your life.
Oh, yes. I mean, I think arguably the first family face I reached up to touch was that
Yes,
of our
I saw
dog.
that.
Was our dog Penny. I think there's even a picture in there
Yep.
of the infant me and Penny, who was not much older but much bigger. She was a washed out Chicago police dog.
Yeah,
Didn't
wow.
didn't quite make the training, but she more than compensated for being a wonderful companion in our family and took us through some tough times. I mean, I relate a very funny story in the book where um, my mother and my father were on their way to one of these Italian restaurants in Little Italy in Chicago,
Right.
and
Right.
my mother in particular did not want to leave Penny in the apartment.
Well, she was still puppy,
So
right?
she was still a puppy.
Yeah.
So my father, thinking quickly, gave her a pair of sunglasses and said, "Here, put these on." And she was pregnant at the time with
Oh my
me.
goodness.
And so my mother said you could hear people going, "Oh my God, look at that poor blind pregnant woman." And of course, Penny was charming, but not exactly a trained guide dog, let's put it
Right.
that way. And so, platters of cannoli would come out or, Italian vegetables, and she would, oh, and
For me? Is that for me?
yeah. So in a few, I must say, within a few minutes, I gather the owner of the restaurant came over and said to my mother, "You're not really blind, are you?" But by that point, the people in the restaurant were going, "Ah, come on, let the dog stay." So, in a sense, my life was all caught up with pennies before we even met each other. But then, as an infant, she would hover over my crib. She would look after me.
I
She
love
would
that.
be, she would be below the crib as I slept, as later our cat Leona would, as our daughters come along in our lives. And I think arguably I learned how to stand, something I'm doing now as I give this interview, because I was tottering to my legs and reaching up to reach to hug Penny's neck.
That was the first one you reached for wasn't mom or dad, it was Penny.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and my parents, I must say, my parents were fine with that. It also must be said. Well, I mean, tell you two Penny stories. My father was walking Penny very early one morning, and she happened to pound a body in the hedges.
Uh-oh.
And so they went down to State Street. This is before the days of cell phones, and hailed a police car. And later that afternoon, my father was upset that the afternoon newspapers had reported only that the body was discovered and not said that it was Penny.
My
The
dog did that.
Yeah, it's right, the washed out police dog. And then, particular memory. Unfortunately, my late grandmother died by her own hand, and it
Oh
was it was
no.
on a Thanksgiving, and it
I'm so
was
sorry. I did read that chapter. Any
yeah.
idea why she did that?
Oh, it would be such a complicated. She had a complicated personal
A whole
life.
nother
Let's put it.
book.
Let's Yeah, let's put it that way.
I'm so sorry. It's
She
hard to
loved
lose your
to.
parents at all, but that way.
Well, she loved. She loved me. She loved my mother. She loved my father, for that matter. She just had some challenges, but it was
Yeah.
Penny who discovered her.
Mm.
And my mother and father always talked about how, when the police came over and brought my grandmother out, Penny was keeping step
Oh,
alongside the stretcher she was on, and they would say, "Good dog, good dog. She's a blue dog," meaning she's a police dog.
she
And
had some of that in her still.
yeah, I think so. And my mother, she had a lot of sadness, but the first time I ever really saw her cry was when we got news of Penny's death. And that had a
It's
great
so hard
impact
to
on me
lose
too.
them.
Yeah.
I lost one of my cats just a few weeks ago. The end of 24, I lost both my parents 5 weeks apart. And the next year, I lost three of my cats. So it was like
Oh my
loss
gosh,
on
Rita.
loss on loss. Every time
Yeah.
you lose a pet, it just reminds you that you're also mortal.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right.
Hmm.
That's one of the gifts they give us in life, isn't
When did cats enter your life? You got all kinds of pets.
it? Well, I guess I'd have to, I was in my 20s. There was Leona.
Yeah.
Well, Leona I talk about because I was coming home from the show I do on NPR one Saturday, and there was a little orange kitten really, who looked up and and this was somewhat before cell phones, and I looked around, and there was a notice hanging up on a tree saying that this little orange cat had escaped through a window that was open in a residence for interns at the British
Oh boy.
Embassy,
Hmm.
and to call this number. It's the weekend. I called the number. I brought home Leona. The people at the who worked in the garage worked at the garage that adjoined the alley where she was discovered had begun to call her Leona, so which seemed fine with me. And in any event, by the time I got the call returned on Monday morning from the nice case officer at the British Embassy, who we later got to know, named Jane Brown, and Jane said, and pardon anybody who's British listening to this, pardon my accent. She said, Scott, I really do think there's a reason why this little cat walked up to you. I think you must,
That British
you must,
accent.
you must care for her now, bring her into your family, but you must promise to rear her as a British cat.
How do you do that?
Well, we put pictures of David Beckham over her food bowl. I brought back Manchester United pennants for her. we tried to give her, every now and then we'd recite some of the British classics like Shakespeare or George Bernard Shaw, where we tried to sing, the songs from Oliver, it's a fine, fine life to her. We did what we could, and I must say this was a particularly laudatory effort on behalf of my wife, Caroline,
Mhm.
who was French. And I, don't mind telling you there was a little War of the Roses tension left over between the two of them. But in any event, she loved Leona very quickly, and Leona would call her French lady. In the morning when Leona would try and catch her attention, I was certain she was going, "Oh, French lady." Uh, I
Little
don't know.
Jerry Lewis there for those
Yeah.
young
So
people who don't know.
in any event, in any event, she and Leona, a particularly important part of our family because as our daughters were young, Leona
Hmm.
was their childhood pet. Uh, when our daughters were young, we would bring our youngest daughter, Paulina, into the bedroom and put her down to go to sleep, and Leona would bound along and then bound up into the bed and curl up with Paulina
Oh,
until she fell asleep.
that's sweet.
And then maybe an hour later, we would bring in our older daughter, Elise, and tuck her into bed, and Leona would jump onto her bed
Hmm.
and stay with her until Elise went to sleep. And then Leona, her duty day being done, would trot out to the living room where my wife and I were reading or watching something, and she would curl up with us.
Oh.
And Caroline typically would comb her. And then at one point, she began to announce that it was time for bed. Right, okay. And we would pick her up in our arms and bring her off to our bedroom
Oh,
and go to
fun.
bed.
I have an orange girl. They're somewhat rare, I'm told, but I'm hearing more and more about them. I have an orange boy too, but Rosie, my orange girl, she definitely loves to lay all over me and be wherever I am. Simba
Oh.
comes and goes, but Rosie's always right there. Very sweet. Now, you've had a lot of pets that traditionally don't live together. How do you manage that? You have a cat and a dog, or you have a cat and some kind of something they would normally chase around the house?
You mean our hamster or something?
Yes, like
Yeah.
hamsters.
Well, there are moments that flare up. There's no
Hmm.
doubt about it. Moments of tension. What can I tell you? Leona has not always been welcoming to Gato Blanco. And Gato Blanco, for that matter, just is sometimes a little nonplussed by Leona. Uh, all of that being said, I think they also know that they're family, and I describe a couple of occasions in the book when, for example, our hamster
Yeah.
Bagel, Bagel, as we call her in French, has unaccountably gotten out of her bagelarium, this large rodent-like place where she lives that our oldest daughter had built for her. And I'll never forget hearing my wife's gasp because, of course, you see Bagel in Gato Blanco's mouth, and you think, oh, what's going on?
Right.
But although Daisy and Gato have had their chance to, how do I say this nicely, make a morsel of Bagel, that never happened. And I think, being an amateur animal psychologist, obviously, that they, tasty as Bagel might have looked, she understood that no, this is a member of our family. This is what we do.
I had something similar happen back when I was married. I had birds and cats, and my husband at the time didn't shut the bird room door tight. Next thing I know, our
Oh,
calico Inga's coming down with a yellow lovebird in her mouth. But she held the bird gently, and when I took the bird away, Dudley, she yelled. She thought she was playing. I don't think Inga was going to hurt the bird. I think she just, like you
yeah,
said, a member of the
plain, yeah.
family.
Well, my wife theorized, that she could inferred, I should say, that she looked at the expression on Bagel's face And it seemed to say, "Oh, gee, I thought playing with the big boys would be a lot of fun."
Oh my goodness. See, I think if you treat them all with love and of
Yeah.
course keep them well fed, there's no
Yes, that's
there's
important
no
too.
incentive to eat
Right.
the other pet, right?
Exactly that. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Let me just take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk more about this awesome book. I can't wait to get back to reading it. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
And we're back again with Scott Simon. You've written a lot of books. Is this like one of your, is this a different topic for you to write about?
It's a different topic for me, but they're all things I care deeply about. I wrote a novel set in Sarajevo during the war, which is something I grew to care
Mhm.
about. I wrote a political comedy called Windy City, set in the Chicago City Council. Another book I love, which has been an important part of my life. I wrote a book about the Chicago Cubs, and they've
Eh,
been an
I love
important.
Chicago. I've been there. I loved it. I had fun visiting there.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I wrote a book called Sunnyside Plaza, set in a home for mentally challenged adults, which
Wow.
resembles a place that I had worked at when I
Mhm.
was in my early 20s. I'm afraid mentally challenged was not the words we used in those days, obviously.
Right.
And I learned so much there, lessons I didn't expect. So it was important to me. It's nice to me to think that none of the books I have done have been, well, I don't think you toss off a book anyway, but all of them have been something about something I've really cared about that has been important in our lives. And
Right, those are the best ones.
yeah, well, I think so. And, it gives me some pleasure, some small feeling of accomplishment that our daughters will always be able to say, well, this is what I really cared about. I must say, Ulysses S. Cat and Other Animals I Have Known is the first book that I have known our daughters to actually read. What
Really?
what they've done with my other books is look for their names in the acknowledgments, and that's pretty much all they want to have to do with that. But
Oh,
this one they're
funny.
actually reading.
Well, see, they lived through a lot of this, so
Yes,
what's in the book.
absolutely, they did. Yeah, they
So
did.
it's more personal for them too. Um, I was really moved by your chapter about Sarajevo and how much comfort the people got from their animals during such a tumultuous time.
Yes, it. I grew to well. Covering the siege of Sarajevo was one of the most important experiences of my life, if not the most important.
Right.
Um, you had this wonderful, lively, bubbling, cosmopolitan city. I loved so many things about it for the same reasons I love Chicago.
Hmm.
It's profound mixture of people from all over.
I love that.
It's peculiarly local sense of humor. Its sense of humor, self-lacerating humor in a sense, and I grew to admire the ways in which, when the rest of the world was turning away from Sarajevo,
Hmm.
the people of that lively, bubbly, cosmopolitan place rolled up their sleeves and saved themselves. And one of the things my recording engineer, longtime recording engineer Manoli Weatherall, and I began to notice that there were people walking their dogs, often inviting sniper fire.
Hmm.
And we would ask people, and well, you can't tell a dog that, no walk today because there's snipers out there.
Hold it in, Fido.
Yeah. In any event, I described coming under sniper fire ourselves as we were reporting that story. But we grew moved as we looked into it because so many people in Sarajevo who were barely eating themselves
Hmm.
were sharing their spare humanitarian supplies with their pets,
Wow.
with dogs, cats, parrots who predated the siege. And yes, they were risking their own lives and safety and welfare
And they were taking in
to go.
some pets that were displaced
They were
also.
taking in some pets who had been dislocated from their families,
Wow.
and it reminded me I believe I say in the book, it reminded me of what real humanitarian aid is, because it seems to me that the instinct with which they took in animals
Right.
was a reflex of the best of our humanitarian instincts to care for each other, because animals, after all, are members of our family.
Definitely.
And we as I think it might even be the first sentence in the book. I say we make no difference in our family. We see little difference between two-legged and four-legged members, and we don't confuse them as species, but I think we expand our hearts to make them part of our families, and
I agree.
that's what makes them worth sharing our lives with. They're our running mates in life. They help us keep time in life and mark milestones in lives, and yes, and learn lessons, but just savor each other's companionship.
That was going to be one of my next questions is what do you think the greatest lesson having pets in your life has taught you?
I think probably that the most important thing is being there.
Hmm.
That's really all they want from us.
It's true.
I mean, yeah,
This
they
is
want to
teddy
be
bear. Say
fed.
what teddy
Yeah,
bear.
yeah. They want to be fed. They want to, but mostly they want to be held. They want to be close. They want to be with us.
That's true. It's
And
very true.
I remember talking to a family in Sarajevo that in fact became the title character of a novel I wrote called Pretty Birds, and they could no longer keep their family parrot because the parrot just wasn't eating humanitarian
Oh
supplies. So
yeah,
they
I
thought
read about that one. That was heartbreaking.
if they went up to the roof
Hmm.
of the building, apartment building in which they were living with other families in the basement at that point because of the war, and released their bird, uh, he could at least fly to the other side of the city that was occupied by Serbian forces and Serbian families, and someone there would say, "What a beautiful bird," and take them in. And of course, they brought their parrot up to the roof during a lull, and seemed to be a lull in sniper and artillery fire. And the bird didn't understand what they were doing.
Of
They would
course.
flap their arms to shoo away the bird, and he would keep coming back. And you could just imagine what he was saying over and over was, "Wait a minute, I just want to be with you. I don't care what
Right.
things are like here. I just want to be with you." Ah, sorry. It upsets me to think about that even now.
It's heartbreaking, but it's so compassionate and loving of them to, it's a gift to be able to let the bird go to try to have a life where he is fulfilled and gets to eat and gets love rather than just keep him in and not be
Yeah,
able to take care of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was so impressed and touched by Sarajevo, and and I have a section in the book on Hurricane Katrina. We went to the funeral of a woman, Miss Anita, in Biloxi,
Hmm.
um, Mississippi, who chose not to be evacuated because in those days you couldn't bring animals with you, and she had quite a collection in her home that she had taken in
Right.
from the streets, and she couldn't bring them. And I mean, it must be said, a lot of people in places like Biloxi and New Orleans had lived through a multiplicity of hurricane warnings, so they were sometimes difficult to convince to leave their homes anyway,
Of
because their
course.
experience had been you leave their home, you come back, the hurricane doesn't really hit, and the place is burglarized, and but that.
Yeah, looted. Yeah.
So in any event, she was hoping that that would happen, but she also felt, and this is what happened, that she wanted to be with her animals when that moment came. And I'm glad to report that it is now that FEMA changed the practice thereafter because there were so many people during Hurricane Katrina
Hmm.
who could not take along their animals. They now have changed their evacuation orders so that if an animal is portable and can be carried along, they will permit that.
I worry about that. I have 15 rescue cats here. So, if
Wow.
something were to happen,
Yeah.
it would be very, and I'm the only human here now. So, yeah, I try not to dwell on it, but it is a concern.
Hmm.
What I wanted to ask you too, what made you name the book after this particular kitty, Ulysses
I
S.
gotta tell you, that was not my decision, and it's interesting that you should mention that. My title, I don't mind telling you, Rita, was Running Mates. because I have said even in this interview, I think pets are running mates throughout lives.
Sure.
And then my editor said, no, 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 given who you are, people will think it's got something to do with politics. And she said, why not Ulysses S. Cat and Other Animals I Have Known? And of course I said, if it sells one more copy because of that, it's worth it.
For sure. Yeah.
But I will tell you, it is Ulysses S. Cat's last revenge on us. Let's put it that way. Ulysses S. Cat. I don't know if you've read this section of the book.
I did. I made sure I read that one. Yes.
Or Ulysses S. Cat was the cat of my late mother. And
I even
my
took
late,
some notes.
oh, all right, and my late stepfather. And my stepfather owned the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago, so it was only appropriate that a Lincolnian name be appropriated for Yulee, as we called him. And Ulysses S. Cat did not like our young family because my wife and I and our two daughters would come to visit my mother
Right.
in Chicago, and my mother would say, "Oh," she was, our daughters, "Hello, babies, how are you? So, what can I get you to eat?" And Ulysses felt that that voice belonged to him.
Oh,
That was the
sure.
voice my mother used on him.
I can see
So
that.
he became rivalrous and jealous and would hiss and that sort of thing, and which our daughters didn't like. But I tell you what he did more valuably, and this is wonderful because the book gave me an opportunity to realize this all over again.
Hmm.
He was there for my stepfather. My stepfather was at a very low moment in what turned out to be the last really months of his life, years of his life, and he was bedridden for the most part. And it mattered to him because he felt he was locked off from life, but it did not matter to Ulysses because all Ulysses wanted was for him to be there and, be a place where he could curl up.
Your book right now, it's on pre-order. When to the again anytime we can talk about anything you'd like.
All right. Thank you, Rita. That's good to know.
Of course, I have to thank Mark Winter for giving me this wonderful spot.